Story 1. The Chimney Sweep. The man who crawled out of our chimney on Christmas Eve wasn't Santa. And when he smiled at me with those yellow teeth and whispered, "Daddy's home," I realized he'd been living above my bedroom for 2 weeks. It started with the smell. For days, the living room reeked of something sour, like wet dog and rotting meat mixed with old soot. Mom blamed it on a dead rat in the walls. She scrubbed the carpets and lit scented candles, but the stench just got heavier. It hung in the air, thick and greasy, making it hard to breathe. Then the food started disappearing. I'd wake up and find the fridge slightly ajar, leftovers gone. Mom yelled at me for stealing the turkey cold cuts, even though I swore I hadn't touched them. Dad's empty chair at the dinner table already made the house feel hollow, but now the house felt watched. On Christmas Eve, the heating died. The house plunged into a deep freeze. Mom tried to light a fire, but the smoke wouldn't go up. It just billowed back into the room, choking us. "Something's blocking the flue," she coughed, grabbing a flashlight. She knelt down and shone the beam up into the black throat of the chimney. She went perfectly still. "Mom," I whispered. She didn't answer. She slowly backed away, her face gray. She didn't say, "It's the wind." She didn't say, "It's a loose brick." She turned to me, eyes wide and terrified, and whispered, "Get the car keys." Quietly. Crunch. A sound like a dry branch snapping echoed from the fireplace. A cloud of black soot exploded into the room. I saw a boot, then a leg, then a long, skeletal body slithering down the narrow shaft like a human centipede. He hit the hearth with a wet thud. When he stood up, my heart stopped. He was covered in black ash, but I could see what he was wearing. He had on my dead father's old flannel shirt, the one we had packed in a box in the attic months ago. It was torn at the elbows and stained with grime. He cracked his neck, the sound loud in the silent room. His skin was pale and flaky under the soot. He looked at Mom, then he looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. "You let the fire go out," he rasped. His voice sounded like gravel grinding on glass. "It got cold up there." Mom grabbed a heavy iron poker. "Get out," she screamed, her voice cracking. The man didn't flinch. He just smiled, revealing gums that were black with rot. He took a step toward me, arms wide open. "Come here, son," he wheezed. "Daddy's home." I screamed. Mom swung the poker, smashing it into his shoulder. He howled, not in pain, but in rage. He backhanded her, sending her flying into the wall. "Run, Leo," she choked out. I didn't think. I bolted for the kitchen door. I could hear his heavy boots stomping on the hardwood floor behind me. I could hear his wet, rattling breath getting closer. I fumbled with the back door lock, tears blinding me. Click. I threw the door open and scrambled into the snow. I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's porch lights a quarter-mile down the road. The police found Mom unconscious, but alive. The man was gone, but when they inspected the chimney, the officers threw up. Above the damper, they found a nest. He had made a bed out of insulation and my dad's old clothes. There were chicken bones, candy wrappers, and a bucket he used for a toilet. And right above the mantel, he had drilled a small hole through the brick. He hadn't just been living there. He had been watching us. He watched us eat. He watched us watch TV. He watched us sleep. They never caught him. That was 20 years ago. I'm a grown man now. I just bought my first house with my wife. It's a new build, secure, with an alarm system. But tonight is Christmas Eve, and 10 minutes ago, while my wife was sleeping, I heard a sound coming from the heating vent above my bed. It wasn't the wind. It was a soft, wet cough, and the faint smell of rotting meat and peppermint. He followed me. Story 2. The 12th door. The police report says my parents died from a carbon monoxide leak. It says I survived by hiding in the bathroom with the window open. That is a lie. My parents didn't die. They were harvested. It began when I found the calendar in the attic crawlspace. It wasn't cardboard. It was carved from heavy, blackened oak that smelled like old cedar and dried blood. It was a perfect replica of our house, down to the chipped paint on the porch. There were 12 doors. I opened door number 1 on a Tuesday. Inside the tiny compartment, there wasn't a chocolate. There was a fingernail, torn right from the root, bloody and raw. Scream. The sound ripped through the floorboards from the kitchen. I ran downstairs. My mom was clutching her hand over the sink, blood pouring down the drain. "It just popped off," she sobbed, staring at her thumb. I was cutting carrots and my nail just ripped itself out. I should have burned the calendar then, but I didn't connect the dots. Not until door number 5. Inside the compartment was a clump of gray hair. That night at dinner, Dad reached up to scratch his head, and a fistful of hair came away in his hand. Then another. Then another. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic, tufts of scalp visible. "What is happening to us?" he whispered. I ran to my room and grabbed the calendar. It felt warm, pulsing. I tried to throw it out the window. It hit the glass and bounced back. The window wouldn't open. I tried the door. Locked. I grabbed a hammer and smashed the calendar. I hit it until the wood splintered and cracked. I went to sleep shaking. When I woke up, the calendar was sitting on my chest. Whole. Unbroken. And the house had changed. The windows were gone. The walls were smooth plaster where the glass used to be. The front door was sealed shut. The wood fused to the frame. We were sealed in. "Leo!" Mom screamed from the hallway. I opened my door. My parents were standing at the top of the stairs. But they looked wrong. Their skin had a glossy, varnished sheen. When Mom tried to walk, her knee made a loud creak, like a stiff hinge. I can't bend my legs," Dad grunted, his face frozen in a rictus of terror. His jaw didn't move when he spoke. The sound just vibrated from his throat. I looked at the calendar in my hands. It was Christmas Eve. The 12th door was shaking. Something inside the box was pounding to get out. Thump, thump, thump. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't stop my hand. It was like invisible strings were pulling my fingers. I watched myself unlatch the tiny hook. The door swung open. Inside, there was no prize. There was a mirror, but it wasn't reflecting me. It was reflecting the hallway. I saw myself holding the calendar. I saw my parents standing behind me. But in the mirror, my parents weren't moving. They were statues. Wooden dolls carved with horrified expressions. I turned around. Mom and Dad were gone. Standing in their place were 2 life-sized wooden carvings. Their eyes were painted on. Their mouths were chiseled open in a silent scream. The smell of fresh sawdust filled the air. Then, the calendar started to laugh. A low, dry, wooden grinding sound. I looked back at the mirror inside the 12th door. The reflection of me was smiling. The reflection reached out of the tiny box. A hand, small at first, then expanding rapidly, shot out of the calendar. It wasn't a hand. It was a claw made of polished mahogany. It grabbed me by the throat. Splinters dug into my neck. "Trade," the voice whispered. It yanked me forward. The world spun. I felt my bones crunching, compressing, shrinking. I was being sucked into the box. The last thing I saw was the giant, wooden face of the reflection looking down at me from the bedroom. It picked up the calendar. It smiled with my mouth. "Merry Christmas," it said. Then it slammed the 12th door shut. I am still here. It's dark inside the box. I can hear the muffled sounds of the outside world. I can hear the thing wearing my skin walking around, talking to the neighbors, going to school. But yesterday, I heard a noise. The thing is back in the attic. I felt the calendar being lifted. I think he's going to give me to someone else for next Christmas. If you find a wooden house in your attic, don't open the door.
Story 3. Santa for Hire. The Santa Claus my father hired didn't smell like peppermint or pine needles. He smelled like formaldehyde and damp basement dirt. And when I sat on his lap for the photo, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. He didn't have fingernails. Just raw, red skin where the nails should have been. "Smile, Sarah," he whispered, his lips brushing my ear. "Show me the gap in your teeth. The one you got when you fell off your bike last Tuesday." I froze. I hadn't told anyone I fell. I'd hidden the bruise and the chipped tooth from my parents because I wasn't supposed to be riding near the quarry. I pulled away, heart hammering. "Dad," I hissed, "I don't like him." Dad laughed, swirling his scotch. "Relax, kiddo. This guy is a pro. Cost me $2,000 for the night. North Pole Elite Services, best in the state." Dad was wrong. He didn't pay for a service. He paid for an executioner. By midnight, the party was dead. The caterers were gone. The guests had driven home. It was just us, the empty champagne bottles, and Santa. He was sitting in Dad's leather recliner by the fireplace, staring blankly at the dying embers. He hadn't blinked in 4 minutes. "All right, buddy," Dad said, clapping his hands. "Show's over. Here's your check." Santa didn't move. He didn't take the check. "I can't leave," he said. His voice was deep, but it sounded wet, like his throat was full of fluid. "The reindeer aren't here yet." "Okay, weirdo," Dad sighed, stepping closer. "Get out of my house before I—" Santa stood up. The movement was wrong. Too fast, too jerky. He towered over my father. He reached out with those raw, nail-less fingers and grabbed Dad's throat. Crunch. It wasn't a snap. It was the sound of wet cartilage collapsing. Dad dropped to the floor, gasping for air, clutching his crushed windpipe. Mom screamed, but Santa was already moving. He produced a roll of silver duct tape from his velvet sack. He didn't hit us. He didn't yell. He just hummed Silent Night while he taped my parents to the dining room chairs. He taped their mouths shut. He taped their eyes open. "We need to be ready for the elves," he sang, smoothing the tape over Mom's hair. I was hiding under the kitchen island, shivering so hard my teeth rattled. I watched his heavy black boots clump across the hardwood. Thud, thud, thud. He stopped at the fridge. He opened it and took out a gallon of milk. Then he walked back to my parents. "Santa needs his cookies," he whispered. He forced the milk down my dad's throat, even though Dad couldn't breathe. Then he took a handful of raw cookie dough and shoved it into Mom's taped mouth. Then the boots turned. They pointed toward the island. "Sarah," he cooed. "Come out, little elf. I have a present for you." He reached under the counter. His face came into the light. Up close, I saw the truth. His beard wasn't fake. But it wasn't his. It was clumps of human hair, different colors, blonde, black, gray, glued to his chin with dried blood. And his skin, it looked like wax. I screamed and stabbed him in the hand with a steak knife I'd grabbed from the counter. The blade went right through his palm. He didn't bleed. He didn't flinch. He just looked at the knife handle sticking out of his hand and frowned. That wasn't on the list. Blue lights flashed through the front window. Sirens wailed. A neighbor had heard the screaming. Santa sighed. "The elves are here." He walked to the back door, unlocked it, and stepped out into the snow just as the police kicked down the front door. They found footprints leading to the woods, but they stopped at the river edge. The dogs lost the scent. But that wasn't the twist. When the detectives ran the background check on North Pole Elite Services, it didn't exist. My dad hadn't hired him. Dad swore he got an email confirmation. The police checked Dad's computer. The email came from inside the house. It was sent from my laptop. And when they searched the house, they found how he got in. In the back of my closet, behind the winter coats, there was a panel cut into the drywall. It led to a crawl space between the walls. Inside the crawl space, they found a sleeping bag, a bucket of raw cookie dough, and a jar full of fingernails. He hadn't broken in that night. He'd been living in my wall for months, typing emails on my laptop while I slept, watching me fall off my bike at the quarry. The police say he's gone. But every year on Christmas Eve, I get an email from an unknown address. It has no text, just a photo of me, taken through my bedroom window, time-stamped 1 minute ago.